Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is part 2 of me watering my orchids. Some are not going to get done because there's a set over there of my rescue orchids, they're still wet. The difference between yesterday and today is yesterday was a weekday, today is a weekend. So there's external noises. Next door seems to be tidying up the garden using the leaf blower, and whereas my little leaf blower is a nice quiet electric one and doesn't disturb anybody, his is a petrol one which is incredibly loud as it's just over the fence. There's also somebody's got a radio on really loud, etc, etc. It's the weekend. We just have to put up with it. I mean, it could be raining, could be worse. Anyway, I'm just going to carry on the same as I did yesterday. We'll look at each plant, have a quick chat about it, get it watered if it needs watering, and get the rest of these done. A bit more interesting in this because towards the end we'll make our way round to where the plants are actually in bloom. So we'll get to see some of those a bit closer up. Right, so let's get going. Same as before, it's a flush run, so it's just a matter of bringing the plants over. I suspect this is a failure. This is my Jenkins CI, and I broke off the pieces that looked like they might grow, and some of them are not going to grow. I mean, I can tell that that's dead, you know. But I water it, and how I water it, because it's in moss, I just basically fill this little tray up with water. Let it sit there for a few seconds so that the moss absorbs a fair bit, and then tip the excess water out. If this doesn't come back into growth soon, then it won't. There's the old leaf blower. We just have to put up with it. I've been waiting nearly all morning for him to finish. It's not that big a garden, it's the same size as mine, and farther away from the oak tree, so I'd have thought there weren't as many leaves, but nonetheless. Now this is my aggregatum, or Lindleyi. It has grown some roots, but it's not what I'd call happy, but it's in a good enough state that it should come back into growth this year. That's still wet, so that's not getting watered. To say, you know, when things aren't growing and there's moss involved in the pot, they don't dry out very quickly this time of year in the cold. Right, so we've got this Cattleya. This is the one that has the bright red flowers. It looks to me like the latest spike might make it. At first I thought these buds were blasted, but they're not. They've just got the coloration on them, yeah, because they will be bright red. So that spike's going to make it. I thought there was a second one. Or maybe that one isn't going to make. Oh yeah. No. Anyway, we've got some buds on that one. Not many, but we will have to wait and see. This hasn't long been repotted because it was in a clay pot. Now obviously with lower temperatures, clay pots are not ideal for plants that ought to be warmer than they actually are in this place. You know, obviously a Cattleya needs to be a bit warmer than I can keep it. So in the winter they don't grow much, and having them in a clay pot, you've got evaporative cooling, which is when you water it and the water evaporates, it's cooling the roots, which is far from what you actually want if you're trying to keep them warmer. So that's that. This is my Varnagara apple blossom. It's in a bit of a state, and this one has got some scale around the base. Now I thought it was dead, but there is a few farther up the plant. Yes, so they are active on this plant. So I always say when you see them, deal with them. Now some of this is going to go in the water. That doesn't matter, you know, it's not a big deal. So the main place they are, I'm going to do the whole plant. I'm just holding it over the water so that it doesn't get all over the grow room. And just go round, underside, top side, underside, down in the crevices, everywhere. Do the whole plant, it's systemic. The more plant you get it on, the more it's going to soak in. Now I've managed to get it all over the glass. Never mind, I would normally do this outside, but I just want to get it done quickly. And on the roots and on the top of the pot. And as a consequence of putting that much around the base, that now doesn't need watering. It'll use that as its moisture. It'll soak that in instead. So that's that one done. That's the first plant I've had to treat for scale in a very long time. And a lot of that is because the days are getting longer, and in addition to that, I'm not using the hot box yet. I've said why I don't use that at the moment. This is a, what you call it, type. I'll get there in a minute. Antelope type dendrobium. So I was just looking, that was right next to that Cattleya. Nope, I think we're okay. This is a warm to hot grower, so it's probably going to struggle, but it has grown quite a new cane, quite a good new cane, and it has got some roots. It's more of an experiment really to see if I can actually get that to grow and bloom. It's unlikely, but we shall see. And then this is one of my Prosthetia types. This is Gardening Black Comet. Buds coming on nicely up here. Be a nice little spray. First time bloomer. Well, it will be. Not yet, but it will be. Now, ideally that ought to have the low nitrogen feed at this point in time, but it'll have to wait till the next watering now because this is a flush run. But you know, that fertiliser is ideal for things that are pushing up buds and spikes. Now, this is my Laelia anceps division basically that I thought was a miserable failure, but on the latest growth here with that green leaf, you can see down the base there is a new growth. So providing that can get going and get some roots, because this has got hardly any, then it should eventually get there. But it's probably 2 years of blooming, if not 3. This would be another one of those that some traders would cheat and actually say blooming size because it was cut off of the blooming size plant that had bloomed several years in the past. But it's not, it's a division. And once you divide it, you reduce the strength and the size to such an extent that it might not be capable of blooming for a couple of years, as is that. This is the mother plant that it came off of. Again, we've got a nice new growth coming here and an eye there that is swelling, because that is a second lead. It should produce a growth. This did produce some reasonable roots last year, so if these new growths can get going, then this will be saved, because I thought I'd lost this completely. This had scale. It's not a happy bunny, it's got some quite nasty marks on some of the, well, that's one of the oldest leaves, but yeah, not happy, but luckily this Laelia anceps is a Cattleya type that isn't a warm grower. This does grow a bit cooler than most others, so it should be happier here than perhaps it was around the other place. Although it doesn't look like it at the moment, does it? Give it time, give it time. Right, and then we've got the, whoops, the two brassicas up in the corner here. It's the last two on this shelf. These are always difficult to get out. Well, one came out easy this time. This is due a repot, but I'm going to wait now until after blooming. It's several pieces, it's not one plant. It does have a spike. Again, that ought to have the low nitrogen feed. The problem with this is the pot. It wasn't in a black pot for some considerable time, so it got a lot of algae. And now that it's gone in a black pot, the algae's died. And that is not good for the roots. So it needs a repot as soon as I can get at it. But yeah, that's Brassia varicosa sea breeze. And we do have a spike, so one of the pieces is going to bloom. I doubt if any more will. It will depend on their overall size. Take that one back with me. It's running short of space. And then the last one on this shelf is the other Brassia. This is a hybrid. Again, this is a few pieces all squashed together in the same pot. We've got some leaves to come off on this one, or leaf. Yeah, we've got lots of nice new growths coming on this one. It's too close together there. There's another one tucked up in here. So again, this was pieces, you know, put in to grow on. They are doing that. The downside of this at the moment, it's on the list to be repotted simply because the latest growths have grown high. They have some nice stumps of new roots forming. Now's the time to get that in some media. So as I say, that's on the list. And I always make sure I pour water over the base of those growths where those root tips are, so that they get some hydration because they're above the media. It doesn't matter how much water I pour in the pot, it's not going to hydrate those root tips. So I always water those. Right, so that's that section done. So I'll shut down while I put these back, and then we'll be moving to the lower shelves in that far corner. And there's not too many plants in there, but I'll be back. Right, so now we're on to the lower shelves in that far corner, what I call my Miltonia shelf, because most of the plants there are Miltonias. This is lots of pieces, new growths maturing, some more new growth starting down here. So this is a bit of a mismatch, and it's still wet. So that's not getting watered. If that one is, because that's the one that's growing the best out of the Miltonias, if that one's still wet, it's highly likely the others are. And I can see this one is without even getting it out of the black pot. Yeah, we'll let that one go again. Again, it's pieces starting to put their new growths out, hoping to get some decent roots on them. So growing on, but not allowing it to get soggy because the roots aren't there yet. And then we've got this one that won't grow. This is Spectabile, is it? No, Regnellii. I always forget this one. It does have some new growths and they are producing some roots, but they're, in a word, pathetic. It just won't grow. I'll push the media up nearer the base of these growths. Perhaps the roots will get down in there. But the roots aren't healthy, they're tiny little wispy things, it's just not growing. this one is a little bit drier than the other two were. That's probably because it didn't get done last time. Those two got done last time and they're still wet. So that's 9 days since they were watered and they're still wet. But my frequency of watering is coming up now. There's 2 odonts on that shelf that are not in this run. And this is a tiny little Miltonia to grow on, a piece that was taken off of a plant that was failing, and I can't read it, so I don't know what it is. Sorry, Miltonia type. So I don't know what that one is. It's my tag, I wrote it, but it's failing. But the plant itself has got a new growth just starting here. So we've got a new growth here, and there's an eye down there that looks like it might push. So it's making it, it's going to make it. These I put them back as I water them because there's only a couple. And then this one, some of you will know, this is Miltonia Sunset. I think there's a couple of pieces in the pot here. This is starting new growths now here, and another one over here. So yeah, and that's got the Welsh moss in it, so that's on the cards for a repot when I get round to it. Can't do everything all at once, can we? The problem is, see, where this was kept drier in winter, my friend Brian basically said that in the English weather, in the winter, with the shorter days, cooler temps and everything, he said you're better off not feeding Miltonias at all in the winter, because they're either not growing or growing so slow that they just can't use the food. So I have been feeding these, but they are on very low feed. Anyway, we've got some new growths coming on that one, so that's good. And if I didn't say that was Miltonia Sunset, keep forgetting which ones I've said. And this pathetic looking thing is Miltonia Summer Glory, and it's 2 pieces, and it's borderline getting chucked out, but it is producing a new growth on this lead. All the bulbs are badly shriveled, including this latest one, but that's also got a new growth coming. So the 2 leads have new growths. Again, that's got Welsh moss in it. It's on the cards for a repot. I think with a repot, those new growths, when they produce roots, if they get down into a media they like, then that might recover. But it's not doing well, but I've got worse. There's worse lying around than that one. And then the last 2 over in this corner. I've got this one, which is bad. Difficult to say what is wrong with this. This is my Wildcat Bobcat, and whereas it had lovely large plump bulbs, it suddenly decided to produce a badly distorted new growth that's just wrong. It's just, but it's now trying to grow out of it. So the new bit in the centre there doesn't look so bad. So all I can hope for on this is it produces another new growth that grows okay, because that's not right. There's something wrong with that. Difficult to tell what. As I say, that was always doing quite well, that one, but not anymore. I suspect it will recover though. I don't think it's sort of dying or anything. It's just I mean, it could be another one of those genetic errors that you get sometimes that just manifest themselves. And then the last one over here has actually got a second name. This one's called Revenge. It's a long story, but this is Miltonia flavescens. I had one of these a long time ago and I could not get it to bloom, and in the end I gave it to somebody else, I believe. And when I went to Burnham's a while back last year sometime, I was in having a coffee in the little tea room, and Sarah came in and she said, "I've been asked to present you with this, and I'm not allowed to tell you who by." Came from Insa, but obviously with Brexit he can't send me a plant, I can't send him plants anymore, so he organised it through Burnham's for the next time that I actually appeared, if you know what I mean. Now it's growing new growths. Unfortunately this one here is right up against the edge. This one will be clear, this one will be clear, and this one's pushing on. So it's coming on. None of those new growths have put out roots yet. So although I'm going to water it, it don't get much. It doesn't get much because there's no roots there to actually use that moisture yet. But it should produce roots in the not too distant future, and then it will get going. And hopefully it can stay in this pot for this year, because this has got the sphagnum moss in it, not the Welsh moss. So it should be okay. Coming on, as they say. Right, that's the end of that bit. I've got to put stuff back together again now, because I'll just swing the camera around if it will go round. We've been doing that corner there. Now obviously the mobile shelf has got to go back in there, but not till I've got all the plants back, and then the cymbidium goes back where it goes, and then we move round to this area and do this. There's a fair few here that don't get watered because they're either in the shady run like the odonts, or they're cymbidiums on the lower shelves, but there's still stuff to do there, so I'll just get the rest of these plants back and then I'll be back again. Right, we're on the last hurdle now, not much left to do. As I said, there's a fair bit that wouldn't be in this run anyway, because it's the cymbidiums are on a separate run, and there are some cooler, shadier types. The Coelogene cristata is looking very good, and because of its pendulous nature, I've put it up, rather than down here with the blooming plants, I've actually put it up on the shelf with those two cymbidiums so that I can see it better. It's better viewed from slightly below if I tip it up, but yeah, we've already had a closer look at these. They are gorgeous blooms. All 5 blooms are open now. The last one did open. I was thinking it might blast, but it did open. So yeah, it's doing okay. It's in the clay pot purely to stop it falling over. It's also in a very small pot, and I don't know what sort of root system it's got. So even though it's not growing, I don't want those bulbs to shrivel, because when I repot this, when the blooms are over and the spike starts to die back a bit, it should produce a new growth, and I want that new growth down in some media, so I need to get it out of this pot and put it in another one, but I will be lifting it out of the pot, not repotting it, so I'll be potting it on into a bigger pot. So that's all that needs doing to that, but that's not yet. Right, then this is the Oncidium barocco that was in bloom for some considerable time. It's finished blooming now. It had 6 spikes on it. I've taken the spikes off. It's having a sort of rest now, as some Oncidiums do, pending new growths. So while it's in this state, we don't drown it. This is the time when you are highly likely to rot your roots. There's often, I won't say always, but often with Oncidium types, when they finish blooming, they pause. They are having a sort of rest. So there's nothing happening. There's no spikes growing, no blooms opening, no new growths and no root activity. Yeah, that is not a good time to keep it soaking wet. Yeah, so this is just going to get a trickle. It's not going to get much at all, and I'll just trickle it around the outside. Mainly, I don't know what this is potted in, because I didn't pot it. It came from Burnham's. So a very small amount of water for that one, and it should start producing new growth soon. They'll come out from the base. How many we get I don't know, but we might actually get 3 new growths, one off of each of these, because they all bloomed, so they were all current leads effectively. You have a look at this plant, it's a little bit surprising. It's got a little old bulb here, and effectively what were 3 growths, all of which bloomed. So we may get 3 new growths on there, in which case we might get 6 spikes next time round. Who knows? And then these are the other 2 Prosthetia types. This one we talked about recently with the brown leaf tips, and I still didn't cut them off. Duh. This is the one where the brown leaf tips are reasonably obvious because the plant's not hydrating properly, because there's too much of the root system is in the air. So this has obviously got to be dealt with. I'm not going to cut those brown tips off now because my scissors aren't sterile. Otherwise I would. So I had them all ready to go yesterday because I knew there was a fair bit to do. Whereas today I'd forgotten about this one. So I need to pour water over these aerial roots. And make sure we get water down in the pot where the roots are. This is a relatively new repot. I don't know how long ago, but not that long ago. Came from Burnham's, Prosthetia radiata, with sheaths forming in the latest growths, and so far with this plant it has never failed to bloom when it forms a sheath. It's growing on quite well. Back end of the plant is now getting a bit clumsy. What I mean by that is the number of leaved bulbs at the front is about the same as the leafless bulbs. So there's energy being pushed into these old bulbs that isn't really doing anything for the plant anymore. So when I pot that better to get those roots down in, the back end of the plant will come off. Put the energy into where it's needed. So you can't go mad doing that sort of thing. If it only had a couple of new growths on the front with leaves, then those back bulbs would be important because they're supporting those growths. But at the moment they're probably draining them rather than supporting them. Now this is the one with the funny name that basically means Prosthetia. It is an Anachelium pachycephalum. There's a mouthful. And basically it's a Prosthetia type, I'll call it, so that we don't upset anyone. It's got an absolute pot full of roots. It's got new growths coming out, and it has spikes in several places. Let me come on, where are you? Oh, there's one. There's one at the top there. These spikes grow really long, and the blooms are quite spaced out along the length of the spike. So it doesn't look. Oh, there's another one up there. So that's 2. There's more than that. There's another one down here, 3. They're quite difficult to see until they poke right out. Anyway, at least 3 spikes. So this is doing everything. It's growing spikes, it's got new roots growing, and it's growing new growth. It's doing the lot. So why is it only getting a flush then? Should be getting a feed. Irrespective, I still wouldn't avoid a flush run, even though this one is, it's doing all it's capable of doing. It's pushing up spikes, it's pushing up new growths, and it's forming new roots. So it's a busy little plant, this one. This one came from Jeff's collection after he died. It was one of the few plants that I managed to get that looked like a reasonable plant, even though I'd never heard of it. Right, so that's that little corner done. There's only a couple. I don't need to shut down, I'll just put them back. The only important thing with putting these back like this is to try and keep the leaves off the glass, because we are still having a frost now and again, which could make the outside of the glass quite cold. So it could actually produce cold burn. The leaf blowing man is now round the front of the house doing the driveway, which is nice. I thought I was going to have to do that. Yeah. Right, so now we're getting a bit of a pickle because of this thing. Because I've got to bend down now. Ooh, gently does it. Ah. So, in fundibulum, I'll have to bend over to show you the blooms a bit closer. They are nice. They are a lovely colour in the centre. And a ridiculously long cane that it grew last time, and it should have been quite a bit longer than that, but it actually had an accident and broke the top of the cane off. So that's not a terminal leaf. Well, it is now, but this desperately needs a repot, but I will wait until it's finished blooming and hopefully we get a new cane starting. That will be a good time to repot. But this is still in the pot it came in, so it's been in there some time. But it came from Burnham's. It's in Burnham's bark, basically, probably with polystyrene chips in the bottom of the pot. But the media would now be classed as old and tired. Not going off as such, but holding water a bit longer than I would like, perhaps. And as it's starting to break down, it will probably be turning a bit acidic. Even though it's bark, it can still do that. So that gets done first because it's on the floor and it's in the way. Now it's out of the way. Now we can get at the rest of the stuff. So this shelf is hibiki, growing nicely, finished blooming. Blooms last absolutely ages on this. And it's pushing up a lot of canes. So it's using a fair bit of energy. And it's not getting as hydrated as it ought to be because the ends of the new canes are having difficulty pushing the latest leaf open. So there's not quite enough hydration getting up there. But this is a strange plant. It's in quite a large pot for the size of the plant, and there's virtually no roots down in that pot. All the roots are around the top of the pot. Unfortunately, to water the top of the pot, the rest of the pot gets wet, which under some circumstances would be classed as dangerous because it could rot the roots. But as there aren't any roots down in that bit of the pot, I don't worry so much. But yeah, it's not hydrating as well as it should because it hasn't got a good enough root system. Hopefully as time goes on, the root system will develop. But it's growing nicely. It's pushed out a lot of nice healthy new canes. There's a lot of greenery on this plant. It's looking quite good. These are funny hibiki. You can have a lovely one. I've had them mounted, I've had them in pots, and they do really well, and they flower for a long time, and they push up new, and then they just go. It's like somebody turns them off or cuts the power to them or something, and they just collapse, they just die. And it's sad, you know, when you've had such a nice plant for such a long time. This is a pot full of kikis, and this is an unnamed nobly type, I believe. And I do believe the silly thing's going to bloom. Well, it's a pot full of kikis basically, but it's a monster. It grows, it's incredibly vigorous. It grows large canes and many of them. Effectively, this ought to be resting, but that's a lot of greenery to support with no moisture. So even though it ought to be resting, I'm giving it a trickle. rather than those blooms on the kikis, I would prefer to see some new growths from the base. If each one of those kikis produces a new growth, I will have a serious pot full of nobile, because it does grow big. So that's that. Then we've got a couple of biggies again. I'll put these straight back. This is Shari Baby. It looks tatty at the moment. It's got a lot of old sheaths around the base that ought to be tidied up, really, make it look a bit better, because it's actually not a bad plant. Lovely strong new growth here. Where was the other one? Oh, in the middle of the plant. But for the size of the plant, it hasn't grown as many new growths as I would have liked. That's the other one there. It's got good roots, but it's in old media. It's on the list for a repot. At the moment, for the size of the plant, it's not doing much, but it has got new growth, so it is going to be using some moisture, so it gets watered. The pot is incredibly heavy. You'd think it was soaking wet. A lot of the weight is the plant. The bulbs are huge on that. Yeah, so that's that one. The last one on that shelf is this one. The tag says it's Shelob Tolkien, but it's not. It's Shelob Marie, and it's not Bratonia. It's called something else. There's another reclassification in amongst it. But the last two new growths here have both pushed up 2 new growths. So in theory we should get 4 spikes. This one will be first, it's the farthest advanced. Then this one, and then this one. But because of the length of time they actually last, the blooms, in theory we could have all 4 spikes, if we get 4 spikes, in bloom at the same time. And that would be a good show. But yeah, it was given to me as Shelob Tolkien, but as soon as the blooms came out I thought, yeah, that's not Shelob Tolkien, because I've owned that plant before. Strangely enough, it's a smashing plant. I gave it away because I got bored with it. And I wish I hadn't. You're allowed to change your mind. But yeah, one day when I see one, I will get Shelob Tolkien again. It's a good one to have. It's normally quite vigorous, it grows well, pushes up good spikes, lovely colours on the blooms, so it's a good one to have. Right, let's pop these back. So there's too few to keep shutting down and starting up again. When there's only a few like that, it's not worth it. And then the last one, which means bending down here. Oh! Effectively, this is the mother plant of that pot full of nobile kikis. And that is heavy. That's not getting watered. But this is the one where the 2 latest growths, something has eaten the top off of them. But that's not the end of the world on the grounds that the leaves are still sort of there. We've got a brown tip on that one. But that should start growing from the base again soon. But that's heavy enough to think that it's still wet. It needs repotting because I don't know what's in that pot. I didn't produce those. Oh! Right, now we've just got what's on the top of this table that's not the odonts, because they don't get done in this run. So, Prima Donna, good roots. See, now this is a nobile that some would say the pot's too big because they like to be really tightly potted. No, they don't. They like to be really tightly potted to avoid humans getting the watering wrong. If they're in a tiny pot full of roots, you can't overwater them, can you? However, if they're in a big pot, you can. And when they're subject to a winter rest, that's when you kill your roots. So you've got to go very careful. But they will take up residence in a larger pot quite happily. You just got to go careful with your watering, which you should have to do anyway. So yeah, 2 latest canes on there. So we've got 2 leads. We should get new growths probably as the blooms start to fade. So this technically is not growing, it's just supporting the blooms. So it doesn't get a soaking. It's not going to get anything now that's dropped down because I can't get hold of it. Oh no, we're out of water. I'm down to 2 containers now, so I shall have to get the RO unit on. But it's not an emergency, simply because I've just watered everything. I won't need to water these for another 7 or 8 days, so I don't need the water yet. All I need the water for in between really is the mounts and the next thing that comes round on the watering schedule. Whatever that is, I don't know at the moment, I don't need to. So that's that one. Just pop in and get another container. Well, that leaves 1. As I say, luckily this is the majority of the stuff is now watered. Right, so we got Paphiopedilums, 2 in bloom with flowers all over them from the thing that's dropping its flowers next to it. Right, this got a second. No, it didn't. It got a third. It was up against massive competition. I only took it to fill some spaces up. It seems to be growing quite nicely. New growths are there. They're pushing on. The leaves are a nice colour, but I don't know what's in the pot, unfortunately. So I water it carefully, gingerly, because I don't really know what's going on in that pot. I don't know whether we've got a good root system or not. We've got a healthy plant, but that could be ruined by losing the root system, by giving it too much water for the type of media that it's got and the number of roots that it's got. So I water that carefully, gingerly I think is the expression. Probably that bloom won't be there too much longer, it's been open some time. So that's that one. And that is Paphiopedilum lianum with an X in front of it, because it's a naturally occurring hybrid in the wild. That's what the X means in front of the name. And the name has a small lowercase letter, which you normally associate with a species, capital letters for hybrids. But, so I'm just taking this off while I'm here. What about the other one? That one's still okay. You can stay. This got a first and this actually got a best in show, surprisingly enough. Wasn't expecting that. That's on Oncidium Tahitian Dancer. It was a rescue for a couple of years, that one. The scale nearly took it down. Get rid of the scale, give it a chance, and it pulled on into what is now quite a nice plant. And it's got room in that pot to grow its next set of growths, and I think the media will be okay for the next set of growths, so it doesn't need disturbing, so it will build up even more strength without the disturbance. So that's that one. What else we got over here then? And the last one. The last one. And this is Paphiopedilum Appletonianum. In case I can see the label, I can say it right first go, because I always say that wrong. Now, this is a miniature. There are no signs of roots in that pot apart from that one down there, and that's not an active root. So this is not growing effectively that well. It's got a nice bud on it that should be open very soon. I've been saying that for about a month now. It just keeps getting taller. Doesn't seem to want to open. But I water this incredibly carefully because I can't see a good root ball in there. So, and I'm still not sure, I'm reasonably sure that this fan here is what this blooming one has come from. So this is an old one, so it's not growing. When it grows its new roots, I don't know, but it isn't doing it yet. From this fan with the bloom on, I can see a root going down in the pot, but it hasn't got an active growing tip on it. So again, I water this very, very carefully because I don't know what it's going to do with that water, but it doesn't get much. So whatever roots are in there, if they're not active, hopefully I haven't put enough water in there for them to start to rot, because it should head towards dryness. The fact that I've only put water around the edge, some of that water will migrate into the bark next to it that's dry, so it will stop it being quite so wet, if you see what I mean. So that's it, that's the lot now. I'm not doing any more today. One of the reasons is the last 2 rugby matches of the Six Nations rugby tournament are both on today. And who have we got? We've got Italy versus someone or other. Possibly Wales. I don't know. Wales are not doing very well. It's ridiculous. When I was younger and I first sort of started getting into rugby, Wales won everything. You know, they were like the top dogs. Now it's Ireland. I mean, Ireland technically have won the tournament, but they still may not. There are 4 possible teams out of the 6 that could actually win, depending on what happens with these 2 matches today. I don't need to know any more details than that. I just hope the games are as good as the last 2 that I watched, which were brilliant. England are playing... Who are they playing? See, Ireland are just expected to win, basically, because they're just at the top of their game at the moment. And so I've just seen some aphids. We don't want those. They're green ones as well. Oh, hang on. Deal with them when you see them. There's only a few. It's enough to be able to just peel off with my fingers and squish. It's only a couple. I'll have to keep my eye on them. Those would have come off the previous plant rather than come in from outside, because the Oncidium Barocco had some on which came from Burnham's. Burnham's are getting a bit guilty about that sort of thing. They often seem to have aphids. Yeah, so Ireland, when they played England, England weren't doing that well, and Ireland were just expected to win. And literally England beat them by 1 point, which was like a drop goal or whatever you call it, literally in the last minute of the game. That upset a few people. But yeah, I think England are playing somebody today. Can't think who it will be. Anyway, last 2 games today, then the tournament's over for, I think it's every 2 years. I'm not sure. It's not every year anyway. Let's just pop these few, I'll pop those few back in a minute. Anyway, quite a few people have said they enjoyed yesterday's video, which was part 1. Hopefully those who enjoyed it have watched part 2 as well. These are not the sort of videos I expect high views on, but nonetheless they're something different, you know. And I think part of what a channel is all about is some variety, you know. If I just did a repot every day for the next 3 weeks, after about 3 days my views would just go down to nothing. Oh, not another repot. You need some variety. So so we've had a watering session now. We won't be doing that for a while again, and it gives us an opportunity to look and chat about each plant as I go past it, and a chat about the watering needs of a plant. Like, is this still wet? Is this actively growing? Does it need a good soak? Does it need just a trickle? Does it need nothing? Yeah? So all that hopefully was in these 2 videos. And tomorrow's a Sunday chat. I'm not going to the show in London. It's too much of a faff, in a word. And the online tickets for Friday and Saturday were sold out. but it did specifically say you can still go and you can still get in on the day by paying on the door. It's a lot more expensive. I wonder why. Makes me wonder whether they did that on purpose. We have discounted online tickets. If you buy online, you get quite a discount. But we won't give too many away, and then people will have to pay the full price on the door. It's a business, isn't it? You've got to make some money. Anyway, I shall see you tomorrow for the Sunday chat, and we'll go from there. Bye for now.